Good morning, perhaps good afternoon, or maybe even good evening, depending on when you are watching this. And welcome back to the Seawolf Show. Really looking forward to this, and I hope, of course, if you're familiar, that you have something delicious in your maybe even original Seawolf mug, but any other mug will do. And any drink will do as long as it's delicious and you're sitting back nicely, relaxing, waiting to join some incredible sailing stuff. And that's what we're going to do today. So are you ready? 3, here we go. 2, 1. Oh, nice. That's always a good beginning. So we have a very interesting show today. News both on Gitana 17, the Edmund de Rothschild in the Jules Verne, and we're going to dive a little deeper into the weather and into the final part of the race. So normally, of course, I do kind of the full analysis, or at least I try to do the full analysis more or less of the entire fleet and everything that's going on. Today we're going to focus a little bit more on what is really happening in the front of the fleet and where are the opportunities with the weather and all of that stuff. So look forward to that. But let's start first with the Edmund de Rothschild Gitana number 17 and their attempt to get around the world in less than 40 days. And it's already starting to look more and more interesting with the hour as the battle between Idec Sports, the previous record holder, and Gitana 17 is heating up. If you're looking at the tracker with me here, let's bring you in here. We can see that yesterday, over the maximum time, they actually managed to extend their lead to a 931.9 nautical miles at the largest point. So that is a pretty good advance, way higher than the maximum 500 to 700 that I said, like, well, if they do good, they're going to be 300, 400 miles. If they get over 500, like between 500 and maybe 600, 700, that'll be really good, because there isn't that much room for improvement in this record. But they managed yesterday to stretch it all the way to 931 miles. So that is pretty impressive on the account of the crew of the Edmund de Rothschild. However, we also know, if you've been following this, that as of today, things are changing. As of today, the Idec Sport is not taking prisoners, so we know that their track was incredibly fast, and we see that also now. So we see already that if we look here at this little graph, that we see the distance, the advance, already gone back quite a bit. So since that moment yesterday, when they really peaked on their advance and got to 931 nautical miles ahead, that has already gone down by about 70 miles, a little bit over 70 miles, almost 80, with them going back to now a lead of 855.3 nautical miles. So pretty intense. And why is that? Well, obviously, if we look at the map, they made a jibe somewhere, so that usually takes some time. But we can also see that the speed of the Edmund de Rothschild right now, 27.4 knots, with an average over the last 24 hours of 29.5. and a 24-hour average of 26.5. And if we hop over to what the Idec Sport was doing now, we see that they were going 35.2 knots at this moment. They had an average 4-hour of 33.9, and their 24-hour average on that same day was 31.8 knots. And so if we put those two next to each other, especially the 24-hour where they were going 26.5, the Edmund Rothschild, and the Idec now going 31.8, it really puts home that perspective that I talked about earlier, where we know now that Idec is more or less not going to go under 30 knots for their entire trip, more or less all the way up to Cape Horn. They are so all the way around the Antarctica. They will just keep the speed very high, and we know that their track is just super smooth, barely any maneuvers. There's two days where they had to make some maneuvers, and the rest is just absolutely smooth all the way to Cape Horn. And so already we see that on the first day even though they're doing great with this great head start that they had, instantly on the first day of them being together in the Southern Ocean, we see that Idec Sport immediately gaining 90 miles. In the first day only, right? And we have about 12 or so days to go in the Southern Ocean here. So quite shocking if you think about that, how fast. That's why I said, well, if they have a 300 nautical mile lead or a 500 nautical mile lead, it's something, but in this particular situation, it's almost less than nothing because there's so little error. And so we see that even though the admin's been doing, a 24-hour of 26.5, significantly faster than what the Vendee Globe racers are doing, but the Idec Sport is still coming up strong. And so, yeah, I'll keep my eye on it, of course, another update tomorrow. And obviously, the Maxi Edmund de Rothschild is in good wind, so they have good weather. It's not perfect as far as the angle for them to sail, so that's why you saw them do this jibe now. And they'll be going more and more south with this system. No ice gates, no ice lines, no ice barrier in the Jules Verne, so they can go as south as they want, and they're probably going to go quite a bit more south to save some space, as we see that Idec is also quite a bit more sailing to the south than the Edmund de Rothschild is doing right now. But even so, at some point they're probably going to have to make a jibe up again. But yeah, we'll have to see what they do. But that's the update on the Jules Verne. Then let's switch over to the Vendee Globe. So I have the head of the group here. Now the leaderboard has stayed more or less the same, so we do have Boris Herman now quite solid in second position, and like we discussed yesterday, we have Lewis Burton in fourth, very far to the west. And I wanted to look a little bit closer now at this challenge. So more or less we see here that we have, of course, let me bring out the drawing tools here. So we have the finish, right? So that's about here. Oh, bad color, better with the yellow here. So we have here the finish in France. That's where we're trying to get. Now we see very clearly that right now we have the Azores high, which is a system that if I switch the data to see the air pressure, then you can see a little bit better what it looks like, what the anatomy of the pressure situation is. So here we see very clearly that we have the Azores high, which is kind of creating the weather. It's the system that all of the leaders, this group is in right now, right? And so if we go back to the actual weather now, so the wind situation that's created by this pressure, we see that it's not really translating into one weather system, let's say, even though it's one pressure system, but we see that the weather actually, that we have kind of a let's call it a spotted situation. So if I delete that here, so we have kind of an area with very low winds here, that's kind of spread out, but we also have an area with very low winds here, and we have a whole stripe of kind of low winds here. Now obviously we're trying to get over there more or less, and so it's very clear to see that we have more or less a barrier here with very little opportunities to actually make it through there in some way and get through. And so that explains a little bit what the sailors are doing right now. And the challenge that they're facing is to kind of find their way through this areas that have very low amounts of wind to get to kind of the area behind there where most of the time you have pretty good winds that are actually in kind of favorable decision towards the finish, which we can see here also. So we have wind right now above the Bay of Biscay and on the ocean towards the Bay of Biscay. Storm, so a lot of wind, but it is all in the right direction. So if they were on the other side of this wall, they'd have an easy way to sail back, despite of course the fact of the storm, but good direction of the wind. Now, if we move forward the weather system here a little bit and start looking at what that does, we see that, with all the weather on the world generally moving, slowly toward the east, we see that this wall, more or less, so if we hop over one more day to kind of midday tomorrow, let's say, or end of the day tomorrow, end day Friday, we see that the situation is changing quite a bit. So remember kind of what this picture looks like. I'll take that away and we'll start the pen again. And so we see that the Azores is kind of sort of spreading out. Even behind the sailors here, we get kind of this rim with kind of a low wind situation. So not a very uniform system, it's quite chaotic. And then we see that that wall that we saw earlier kind of splits up, giving us an area with very little wind here. And the rest kind of breaks off and moves over and gets kind of pushed to the side by this other storm, where we have another area. Creating, though, an interesting path where we can see that we have a corridor, let's say, which goes straight to where we want, right? And so what we're seeing right now, so if we quickly go back to the situation that we saw before, so I'll leave this drawing up here, but we see the situation now. And so the reason why the hunters are taking this particular route is they know that that wall is going to stay in place. So that's going to just move where, you know, the yellow stuff is right now. But this particular road, this kind of red stripe that I draw right there, that's more or less the path that all of them know will be the only path, because these low wind areas will, you know, inevitably get in the way if they would take a track that's anywhere there. And if we go a little bit more further in the prediction, so let's move up another day, and I'll delete the drawing again here. What do we see? How has that adjusted the systems again? Well, we see that we remain to have this kind of little pocket here, and then we see that the high turns into a giant band, which is going to cause problems for, you know, we see Armel Tripon here, we see Maxime Sorel, that was the name I was looking for, we see Maxime Sorel there, and so they are likely going to get stuck in there, but we see that the rest of the road more or less stays open here, and these are predictions lines which I think are not correct, that we see the other sailors kind of do, because more likely we will see them actually see a track that is more or less like this, right? So they'll go more or less this way. And not, you know, that much to the left as we're seeing it right now, but that's kind of what they're trying to do. So the first challenge here for the next, you know, time that we're moving towards is to get their way into this kind of tunnel, let's say, of weather. And let me delete that actually for a second again, and let me make this a bit bigger. So we have this tunnel that's more or less here, the road. And that's what they're all trying to maneuver their way into, hoping, of course, that they're not going to get caught up by this kind of band of low weather that seems to be slowly expanding. And more or less, for sure, Maxime Sorel and Armel will both get kind of stuck in there. So it's like they get another doldrum to traverse, let's say, while the rest is probably going to make it in here. But if we see, so this is Saturday, by the end of Saturday, we see that once they're in here moving up, we see that we have another area with very low wind, another kind of wall that's, you know, in kind of shape like this here, that again presents quite a bit of a challenge. Now we knew though that we do know that this type of systems tend to move slowly towards the east because of the way how our planet moves. And so if we look at how this is going to traverse through Sunday, we see very clearly, so let me delete the drawings here so you can see better, that this wall that was just kind of right in front of them is quickly moving towards the finish, towards the Bay of Biscay. So the prediction here, these boats are no longer moving, so don't look at that. They will be significantly further ahead by Sunday than they are drawn here. But now we see that, you know, things have changed, and this wall kind of located here now, so moved significantly to the east. We see a little bit of a pocket here, and you know, for the people more located below, we have the Azores High still here, and this kind of outrunner all the way to that side, kind of like a doldrum-like situation, right? So that puts us on Sunday here, and then if we roll the prediction a little bit more, we see that then finally that wall kind of crashes into the Bay of Biscay and kind of dissolves on land. And now, so this is Monday next week, by the end of Monday, then we see that basically we have now an open road to the finish, with no real other weather problems coming up there. Like at some point, of course, there always will be more. But all the way until more or less Tuesday, we see that the situation is pretty much good. Going into Wednesday, still same, so we get stronger weather. Obviously we get a storm here, which is likely that's one of the days, so that's, you know, exactly kind of 6-7 days from now. So this is kind of what the finishing situation might look like with an Atlantic storm coming kind of over the edge of the Bay of Biscay right as they come in. Then as we go through Wednesday and to Thursday, which is like a likely day, very likely day for them to finish, we see you know, pretty strong weather, but no more obstacles basically, right? And so that's kind of the challenge right now. So that's what all of them are going to have to do. And so we see that the kind of the upper middle pack all the way to Maxime is right now in a pretty good position, except for Damien, who is a little bit more to the east, and that might work against him as we run to the prediction here again. As we see that it's let me get that for a second. As we see that you know, is going to broaden and open up more here, is going to be more of a problem for him as he moves in. But the front runners, and so this is the reason now it becomes apparent here why Lewis is taking a path that takes him a little bit more to the west. Well, this picture here, so this is about 10 hours from now, that shows where he's hoping to get his advantage, right? So he's already almost at the entrance to that road, and he knows that that road is basically going to stay good. So that particular area is not really going to be affected. That's the place what I just drawn before. So kind of this, you know, general area here, that's the road. And so we can see that he's already more or less on that road. And that's the reason why he went with a little bit of a turnaround. And so he can pretty much keep moving straight through there as the rest of the weather, as you see that particular band kind of stays clean of, you know, low weather areas, as long as they keep sailing through there. So you see everybody kind of making it in there as good as they can, and then trying to stay and tack and jibe as they need within that band to get as close to the Bay of Biscay and get in a good position there. And then, you know, waiting as this kind of clears up, and then by Monday, Tuesday, we see, now we have a clean road. And so at this point, most of them are going to be more or less here. So this is going to be more or less their position at that point around Tuesday, let's say. And then we're going to, let's take that here, move in over Tuesday. By the end of Tuesday to Wednesday, I would say that some of them might be quite close to the entrance of the Bay of Biscay. So let me make the thing a little bit more thin here and pick another color. So then we're going to see them likely be sailing more or less here, let's say, on Tuesday to Wednesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, it's, you know, it's kind of sort of Wednesday here, and Wednesday, Thursday. Some might be a little bit faster, might be a little bit slower, but we can more or less count on the fact now that Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to, you know, kind of see them go in there, and this is the different weather that they see. So if we go through that whole thing one more time, but then look at weather, so now we kind of have some positions of where they're more or less going to be, and actually I can make that kind of longer, where we say, well, so we have some cross here, we have it one here, we have one kind of here, and we have one kind of, you know, where they are now, and I'm talking for the whole group now, but this is more or less the route, as you can see. Now, if I reverse the weather, then we can kind of take a good look at what type of weather that places them in, right? So right now we see pretty, you know, they're still in the trade winds, let's say, but they're going to move more or less closer to the Azores system, and they're going to get some winds that are a little bit lighter, right? So we see kind of around where this lowest yellow band now is, that we see the blue of the of the Azores permeate a little bit through, and create probably some lighter situations for everybody basically that is lower than where Boris Herman is at that point. So we'll see Giancarlo Pedotte, we see Jean Le Cam, we see Benjamin Deutreau, we see Yannick Pesthaven, we see all of them kind of a little bit lower there, getting probably caught in some lighter winds. And so that predicts that we might see Charlie, Boris and Thomas and Lewis Burton gonna run away with this. So it looks to me as if kind of 10 to 17 hours from now, we'll start to see a first kind of those 4 running a little bit further away from the rest. Then, as we go into Friday onto Saturday, what's also depicted here, we'll see that kind of the whole group of hunters coming together a little bit, all in that lighter band, and a lot of things can happen there. Although I think that, again, those 4 leaders, they will have already maneuvered their way into this kind of band that I drawn here, and they'll be sailing relatively fast, so they won't be so affected, hopefully, by those lower winds, and the 4 of them will run away from everybody else in that group again. Then, as we go through Saturday, we see that that band of lower weather is then going to go lower, and the rest of the group will kind of make its way through and can set in the hot pursuit of the 4 leaders at that point. Then, as we go into Sunday, we see that those 4 probably have built up a real lead, probably something like 100 or maybe 200 miles or so ahead with the 4 of them, making their way more north. I don't think they'll go actually this far north, because we have this kind of little system that's going to be in the way. So I think they'll follow more or less a straight line like this, like how I draw the crosses, but we'll have to see. And then as we go through Monday, we see that the weather really opens up. And from that moment on, it's going to be, there's going to be no more, I think, very intense strategizing from that point on, because we'll have a straight road with, as you can see, wind more or less right behind from us. And at that point, it will just be an absolute downwind screech through the finish. With, as you can see, the wind direction stays good through Tuesday, then on to Wednesday, as I said, and then into either Wednesday end of the day finish, or Thursday somewhere beginning of the day, midday, maybe end day finish for many of them in the hunter group, all with not super strong winds, but with pretty good wind and with the storm kind of on their heels as they go into the bay on Wednesday. And maybe this will really affect them, maybe not. It's a prediction that's 7 days away, so it's very, very hard to say if that will really happen. But bringing us into Thursday, then a lot lighter again after that storm for the beginning of the day, and pretty strong storm at the end of the day. Those will kind of be the conditions. And so I would say that as it looks now, because we did a top 5, of course, for you guys to win a beautiful mug. Tastes amazing. What does that mean for the leaderboard? So I would say that, judging that whole situation that we just went through, right now we have Charlie Dahlin in 1, we have Boris Herman in 2nd, we have Thomas Rouilland in 3rd, and we have Lewis Burton in 4th. I would say that as it looks right now, and bar any, let me delete this here, yeah. Bar any kind of problems with breaking foils or hitting something in the water, don't forget that they're going into the area now where Chirel was damaged, where Artet Finetro was damaged, where there is also a lot of traffic, a lot of trash in the water. We are back in dangerous water, folks. So that might play a role. That might still ruin somebody's chances. But saying that that's not going to happen, with them all pushing the boats as hard as they can, it looks very much, really right now, as if either Charlie Dahlin or Lewis Burton, actually, even though he's in 4th, is perhaps in the best position now. I would say, based on this situation right now, that Lewis Burton is actually in the best position. I mean, we see it already kind of unfolding in this moment, where we see Apivia doing 6 knots right now, Boris doing 11 knots, and then Thomas behind doing 16. But you can see that they're in this lighter patch, while Yannick is doing 19.1. So again, Charlie doing 6 right now, 24 average of 14.1. Lewis Burton, 15.2 24 hour, and he's doing 19.1 knots now. Now Lewis has more a distance to cross, so that's why he's in 4th and not number 1 right now. But as the weather develops, as you can see if I hop here a little bit forward, I think with his increased speed, and this is really the moment, so tomorrow morning around 2 o'clock is what we're talking about right now, 2 to 4 o'clock, we see that they are all going to be really in some pretty light winds. But who is the one person who is going to be outside there? Lewis Burton. And so if in this particular area they are all going to be doing 6, 5, 7 knots, and he's going to be doing 20 or 21, because look at this, this is great downwind sailing. So Lewis in his foiling monster is going to be able to do, you know, 20 knots, going 19, 20, 22 knots. He's going to be fully going. And that means that over Friday, so tomorrow, we're likely going to see that by the end of the day, I think that Lewis is going to be in second position, and with a PVI with Charlie de Lint still being in first, Boris third, and Thomas Ruyant in fourth. And since Charlie is still going to be kind of skirting an area with some lower winds, and because Lewis Burton has a better angle, I think over the course of Saturday, which is kind of how the prediction here also predicts it, that Saturday Lewis is going to overtake, and it's going to be more or less, they're not going to be at this particular angles that you see here, but I predict that this is going to be the picture that we're going to see towards the finish, bar any accidents, but that's what I'm saying right now. So 7 days before, will be interesting to see if I'm right or not. We're going to have Lewis Burton in 1, Charlie in 2, Boris 3, Thomas 4, and Yannick Besthaven in 5th. That's what I see, and I think that bar any crazy accidents or anything happening, that will very likely be what we will see at the finish at this time. It's not one at all, so there's a lot of things that can happen, but for the top 5, obviously I'm not in the contest, but right now I'm putting it down, I'm saying that's likely what's going to happen. So one more time, Lewis Burton number 1, Charlie de Lint number 2, Boris Herman number 3, Thomas Ruyant number 4, Yannick Besthaven number 5. That is what I'm seeing right now, looking at the positions now with the short distance. I mean, still a week, but relatively short distance still to go, and the weather prediction as it stands, that is my prediction. So yeah, I'm curious to see what you guys think. You know, let me know in the comments. It's not for the match because the match is already closed. So 5 of you who guessed earlier are going to get 5 beautiful special edition signed by me Seawolf mugs. But this is my this is what I think will happen. So yeah, like I said, a little bit different but more in-depth show on the front of the fleet. Tomorrow I'll look at the entire field again, but that's it for the show today. So again, thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to like the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get an update whenever I post a new video. And for all the other info, our incredible mugs, t-shirts, and all that other stuff, go to seawolvestv.com. I think for the Childhood Seawolves Day in April, there are still now I think 3 spots left for the last coastal clinic. So 3 of you, if you still want to join, there is still a chance to book right now, but very likely in the next 10 to 12 hours or so that is going to be fulfilled, looking at the pace that it's been going so far. So I think final call, I think tomorrow I'm going to announce that all the clinics that we're organizing together with the Volvo 65 are completely sold out, which is super cool, right? It's super nice that we're all gonna meet up and have a great day of sailing here in the North Sea. If everything goes well, we're actually going into night clock lockdown probably on Friday, but I'm sure we'll get out of it at some point. So again, guys, girls, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you with something hopefully very delicious in your cup tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Ciao.